Most places have spring. Maine has, well, mud season. And it's not just a nickname, it actually changes how people live, work, and even travel around the state. Mud season typically runs from late March into early May. All winter long, the ground is frozen solid. Frost can go several feet deep, especially after a cold, snowy winter. So when temperatures finally start rising in late March and April, the snowpack begins to melt, but the ground underneath is still frozen. That creates a drainage problem. Instead of soaking into the soil, all that meltwater has nowhere to go. It just sits on the surface and saturates that top layer of dirt. A simple way to think about it, it's like pouring water onto a frozen sponge. Normally the ground would absorb it, but when it's frozen, everything just pulls on top. At the same time, the freeze-thaw cycle kicks in. Temperatures go above freezing during the day and drop below freezing at night, so the ground is constantly expanding and contracting. Add in spring rain on top of melting snow, and you've basically got the perfect recipe for soft, unstable ground. During mud season, some roads in Maine literally can't handle heavy vehicles.
MMTA started in 1946. We've grown from dozens of members to hundreds of members to now nearly 2,000 members. Our truckers are the frontline people that keep the industry moving. One of the sayings we have is, if you got it, a truck brought it. Our trucks move about 80% of all the goods and services that move in Maine. Mud season's kind of a Maine term. You have to live here to experience it. It impacts everybody. You see it in your driveways, but our drivers see it on the roads. With mud season comes posted roads, and posting roads is a protection mechanism that the state and municipalities undertake to try to keep their roads from breaking up. So you've gone over roads, you've seen the frost heaves and the potholes. Those are caused by the thawing and refreezing of roads. And it's a cycle that goes on at this time where it might be, 12 degrees overnight, and it might be 50 degrees during the day. And so the road is constantly melting and refreezing, and it leads to road destruction if we're not careful. If roads could be built to the perfect standard, meaning a proper base and proper ditching, there probably wouldn't be a need to post roads, but it's just so expensive to build roads. The states and municipalities do the best they can and then post them during certain times of the year to try to preserve them. Once they're posted, they can be posted anywhere from November 15th to June 1st. And one of the things that's been a little different over the last probably 10 years or so is roads seem to be getting posted earlier in the year. So municipalities are putting the signs up earlier, and obviously, again, that impacts business. So it's not easy. Incomes are limited in Maine. The work season is limited, and when you add posted roads to it, it shortens up the ability to work and make a living in Maine. So it's challenging. There's no question about it. But again, everyone recognizes the importance. We want that next generation of truckers to come, whether you're interested in driving or you're interested in being a diesel technician, you want to work in freight handling or logistics, and we urge you to go to our website. We're sure trucking is going to be around for a long time to come. We're in hopes that next generation of young people wants to come and make a good living, and there's lots of opportunities. There are some driving jobs you can be home every night, and some you can leave for a few weeks and not come home. You see the whole country. So, it provides for a lot of opportunity for young people, and both men and women, veterans, people who were in other careers and said, I'm really kind of tired of what I've been doing. I'd like to try something different. We think you ought to give trucking a try.
Mud season doesn't just affect how people travel, it changes how people work. In industries like logging, access to land depends entirely on road conditions. When roads soften, heavy equipment can't get in without causing damage. In many cases, operations slow down or stop altogether until the ground firms back up. Farming sees a similar pause, but for different reasons. Fields are often too saturated to plant. Equipment can't move without tearing up the soil. So instead of growing season, this becomes a time for preparation, repairing equipment, planting crops, and waiting for the land to dry out. Mud season is an in-between, a transition between winter work and the start of a new season. Of course, I don't just talk about Maine, I help people move here too. I'm Kyle Dennis, host of Meeting Maine and a real estate agent with Pouliot Real Estate. Maine has so much to offer: historic towns, lakes, mountains, and communities full of character. If you've been dreaming about moving, I can help make it real, guiding you through neighborhoods, homes, and all the details that matter. Let's find your place in Maine. Mud season doesn't stop people from getting outside, but it definitely changes how they do it. Hiking is one of the biggest shifts. As snow melts and the ground thaws, trails, especially at lower elevations, become soft, wet, and vulnerable to damage.
Maine Audubon is first and foremost a conservation-based organization, but it also really believes in education and also connecting to communities. Maine is so unique in the way that we have so many different types of forests, whether you're on the coast versus inland in the state versus the western mountains. There's just so much that this huge state has to offer. You can span it in like a matter of like 9 or 10 hours and drive the whole thing and just like see such a difference from the very tip in the south and the beaches all the way to the deep North Maine woods up near the Pouliot area, and that's spectacular. Mud season is a good thing. It's part of the freeze-thaw cycle. It's a natural earth process that kind of signals to all of the vegetation that it's time to start sprouting again for the seasons ahead. And it also helps restore water levels from below the surface to like streams, rivers, and brooks and beyond. So it's very important for it to happen. So it's this time of year where you'll start to see the squirrels scurrying crazy across the trails, or you'll start to see more deer coming back out. You'll hear the birds chirping when you're out on the trails, which during the wintertime things get very muffled and quiet. But now with all the lush and the vegetation coming back, so too are the animals, because they're ready to start storing up their food and preparing themselves for the summer ahead. I think the biggest advice from the trail perspective is to stay on the designated path of the trail. It seems a lot of times uncomfortable for people because they will approach big areas that right now this looks pretty solid still to walk on, but it is very undulating and concavey, and then once the late afternoon comes and the sun's been hitting this area for a while, it will become mud. And it's people's brains to want to avoid obstacles like that, whether it be mud, water, ice, whatever, something that their brain deems as potentially dangerous or hazardous, they avoid it. And when we do that, we usually end up stepping off trail or kind of skirting the edges of the trail. And the problem with that is that it just greatly increases the zone of impact for outdoor recreationalists. And what we're trying to do with these intentionally designed trails is protect the ecosystems that they pass through. And when we continue to spread out and out and out and out, the ecosystem gets less and less and less. Water is looking for the path of least resistance, and that's exactly what a trail is. We remove the trees, we remove a lot of the organic material and strip it down to something that water can very freely flow over or across. And that's why we have so many of the issues. So it's just really important, as uncomfortable as it is to get your shoes wet, to like plan ahead and prepare. You know, wear the proper footwear, maybe carry a pair of like micro spikes in your backpack in case there's still patches of ice, but walk through it. There will still be erosion and soil loss while walking through muddy areas, but it will be drastically less impact than if we allow the trail to expand.
Across Maine, this is when winter activities start to wind down. On the mountains, ski season is nearing its end as warmer temperatures and thinner snowpack start to limit what terrain can stay open. Most Maine ski areas typically operate into late March or early April, depending on the year and conditions. After that, trails begin to close as snowpack thins and consistency becomes harder to maintain. At the same time, Maine's lakes are in transition. Ice that supported snowmobiling and ice fishing just weeks earlier begins to break up, but the water isn't ready yet either for boating or swimming. In many places, access becomes limited or unpredictable during this period. Across the board, outdoor recreation can become less predictable. Conditions change quickly, access can be limited, and plans need to be flexible. If you time it right, mud season might actually be one of the most peaceful times to be here. This is one of the few times of year when Maine slows down. Fewer visitors, fewer crowds, a kind of quiet that's hard to find during peak season. The snow is melting, streams are running high, the ground is soft, waking up. You start to notice small things, the buds forming on branches, birds returning, wildlife moving again. And it's just before black fly season, which for a lot of people is a major advantage. So should you come visit Maine during mud season? Well, it really depends on what you're looking for. If you want quiet, flexibility, and a slower pace, it can be a great time to be here. But if you're expecting ideal hiking conditions, easy access to every part of the state, or consistent weather, this probably isn't the right window for you. It's not always easy. Roads change, conditions shift, and plans don't always go as expected. If you are here during mud season, these are a few things that might help. Muck boots or waterproof footwear are almost essential. Layers matter because temperatures can swing throughout the day, and extra socks, they're never a bad idea. Also, depending on where you're driving, a car wash might be part of your daily routine. Mud season may not be the postcard version of Maine, but it is a real one. It's the transition between winter and summer, and if you live here, it's just a part of life. It may not be everyone's favorite season, but it's one that tells you a lot about what it means to live in Maine. What do you love or hate about mud season? Let us know down in the comments and hit subscribe for more Meeting Maine.